It's the International Soccer Preview. This is Series 15 of our MediaCast. It's the short version of Series 14 on Euro 2024 qualifying. We're looking at Group F: Belgium, Austria, Sweden, Azerbaijan, and Estonia. Here we go. It's the International Soccer Preview, Series 15. This series is a shortened version of Series 14 and primarily part 3 of that series.
Okay, let's look at each team in Group F with a summary of their history and then a look at their recent form.
All right, well, we start with Belgium, and I'll do the longer history. So Belgium has an impressive history of qualification for the World Cup. They were there for the first 3, and after a long flat period where they qualified for only 2 between 1950 and 1978, they went on to qualify for 6 in a row. That period from 1982 to 2002 saw not only their first trip past the group stage, but consistency in doing so 5 of the 6 times, peaking with a 3rd place finish in 1986. Incredible then that none of this reflected in their Euro Cup play. They had earned 2 impressive results during the period of World Cup drought. That was 3rd place in 1972 and 2nd place in 1980. But Belgium saw only 2 cup appearances during their strong World Cup period, one of those by dint of hosting, and they were knocked out of the group stage in both cases. Results in the 2 tournaments fell in line from 2006 onward, beginning with non-qualification for either cup until 2014, and then a new generation taking them consistently past the group stage in both cups.
Yeah, in terms of recent performance, their golden generation did take them abruptly from non-qualifications to passing the group stage consistently. It reached its zenith with the 3rd place finish in the 2018 World Cup. Such was the talent on the squad that the 3 quarterfinal finishes surrounding it was viewed as something as an underperformance. Fears of the squad aging out seemed to come true with a ghastly showing in the 2022 World Cup, the performance even worse than the result. It had not been foreshadowed in their undefeated qualifying campaign, but perhaps was in their UEFA 2022-23 Nations League A performance, where they lost both legs to Netherlands and tied Wales besides. Still, a 2nd place finish ahead of Poland was not bad. It remains to be seen if it's a lapse in form or another end of a good period.
All right, we move on to Team 2, which is Austria. And Austria was a strong team in the early days, even if their participation was inconsistent. They earned their best results with a 4th place finish in the 1934 World Cup and a 3rd place finish in the 1954 edition. By the time the Euro Cup started in 1960, they had lost that strength and were not qualifying for competitions. While they did have a resurgence in World Cup play in 1978, reaching the quarterfinals there for 2 cups in a row, they did not register a Euro Cup performance, and even after, while they reached 2 of the 4 World Cups in the 1990s, they still hadn't reached a Euro Cup. In 2008, though, the situation reversed. They reached 3 of the 4 Euro Cups from 2008, but didn't come close to reaching a World Cup during that period. Perhaps an uptick in recent form will finally see the disparity in performances come into line, as the 2022 World Cup qualification saw them reach the UEFA playoff following their best Euro Cup result in 2020.
Yeah, talking about the recent performance, their fortunes turned with a tremendous qualification run for the 2016 Euro Cup and continued into 2020 when they passed the Euro Cup group stage for the first time. Oddly, but consistent with a history of non-correlation between the 2 cups that you talked about, they finished 4th in their qualifying groups for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. 2022 looked better than it was, as they did reach a playoff round, but that was due to their UEFA Nations League performance in 2020 to 21, where they were promoted to League A. In the following 2022-23 season, though, they proved out of their depth. After an excellent opening win in Croatia, they managed only a draw and were demoted back to League B.
All right. Well, the top 3 team is Sweden, and Sweden's strength comes in waves. They did well in the 1930s, passing the group stage of the second and third World Cups. They had their best results in the 1950s, most notably second place as hosts of the 1958 World Cup. And they qualified regularly during the 70s, though only for the World Cup. They also had another peak in the early 90s. There they qualified for their first Euro Cup and came second as hosts in Euro 1992, and that was followed by a third place finish in the 1994 World Cup. So good results continued in World Cup play, but fell off in Euro Cup results. They've been flat in both tournaments since 2008, so they were due another good period in recent times, but perhaps passing the group stage in both cups in 2018 and 2020. Sorry, I messed up there. Despite passing the group stage in both of those cups, they still haven't reached the heights of some of their previous periods.
Yeah, and looking at their recent performance, a poor period of not reaching the World Cup and falling at the group stage of Euro Cups was typical of the other lulls in their career. And it seemed to come to an end by passing the group stage of each cup, the World Cup in 2018 and the Euro Cup in 2020. But if these were the build-up to another period of success, matching peaks of the past, as you alluded to, it collapsed by failing to reach the 2022 World Cup, and only got worse with the dreadful UEFA Nations League campaign in 2022-23, where despite besting Slovenia in the first and last games, they lost all in between to Norway and Serbia, and were humiliatingly relegated to League C.
Yeah, Sweden going to be in League C next year. That's a bit surprising. All right, well, our fourth team is Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan has improved slightly from their start in 1996. Their points count has been slowly rising over the years, slightly more so in World Cup campaigns, although recent times show a lapse. 2 features are always there. Firstly, at least one result against a much stronger team, sometimes even spoiling their campaign. And secondly, a bottom half finish, meaning that their improvement is quite muted and doesn't count for much. 2014 World Cup qualifying was the only campaign that can really be regarded as competitive, and that 4th of 6 finish, their only time out of the bottom 2, is proving to be a one-off event.
Looking at their recent performance, the competitive campaign in 2014 was promising, but 2016 saw only vestiges of a run in the middle and 2018 at the beginning, but neither was sustained. They fell back in 2020 and 2022 though, earning only a single draw in each. In 2020, there were no weak teams in the group, but in 2022, losing both games to Luxembourg was disappointing. 2014 threatens to be a peak or a flash in the pan, but a solid campaign in 2022-23 UEFA Nations League C gives pause. After a poor start, earning only a tie over the first 3 games, they won the last 3, including an away win in Slovakia to finish ahead of them. Kazakhstan won the group, but beating them 3-0 in the final game was a good wrap-up, though they stay in League C.
Right. And our last team here is Estonia. Estonia appeared in qualification for 2 World Cups in 1934 and 1938, but after that they were part of the Soviet Union. They returned as an independent country for the 1994 World Cup, but lost all 10 games in that campaign and in Euro 1996 qualifying. They grew in strength after that, but only once finished in the top half of the table until an excellent campaign in 2012. That saw them finish second and reach a UEFA playoff, falling just short of the cup. But they went into decline after that, and their most recent campaign in each cup was very weak. They regularly take a few points from higher teams, beating the likes of Belgium, Slovenia, and Serbia, and in 2014, a tie with the powerful Netherlands.
Looking at recent performance, yeah, like you said, their 2012 campaign was exceptional and not likely to be repeated. But the fall from that to the level shown in 2020 has still been bitter. A single tie with Belarus was their only point in Euro 2020 qualifying, and a win over them in 2022, a faint shadow of their previous form. A tie in Wales in 2022 harkens back to 2014 and the campaigns before, where they were a threat to steal points from good teams. All recent points have otherwise come against teams of their own level or weaker. The 2022-23 UEFA League campaign at least showed consistency against the weak, beating Malta and San Marino in all games to earn promotion to League C, but gives little indication of their current form.
All right, well, let's move on to part 3 of Series 14. That's where Connor and my discussion of the prospects of the teams took place. Okay, well, let us move on to part 3, and we're going to begin that, changing our format a little bit. We're going to begin by looking at the pots that they came from. The UEFA rankings are quite different, as we'll see, from the FIFA or ELO rankings, but they were placed into pots according to the UEFA rankings here. So, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, those rankings for the pots came strictly from the most recent Nations League. Belgium are the pot 1 team. They were ranked 7th overall. Austria are the pot 2 team, but they actually had the worst record of all 12 League A teams. So they didn't perform well, but by virtue of being in League A, ended up in pot 2. Sweden, on the other hand, their poor performance put them in pot 3, and on top of that, they were second bottom in pot 3. So they were basically halfway down the list of UEFA teams, which is not where they normally find themselves.
Yeah, a really big difference between second from the pot 2, second from the top pot 2 Austria and Sweden. Just a huge gap in UEFA rankings, at least.
Yeah, 17 teams. Or 17 teams between them, but perhaps not reflective of their actual strength.
Yeah, for sure.
Following that, you have Azerbaijan, who are from the middle of pot 4, and then with Estonia's dominant performance in League D, not really, they were in pot 5, and kind of from the bottom there.
That's right. Okay, well done. And yeah, as we say, not really reflective of their strength. So let's see how they're ranked among, or ranked by FIFA and ELO rankings.
Yeah, so Belgium are 4th in the world in FIFA. That was in December 2022. And then 10th in ELO. They've dropped actually quite a bit in ELO because they, as you mentioned earlier, they were 1st in both rankings as recently as June 2021. But the poor performance in the most recent World Cup has seen them slip down a little bit.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out earlier. I mean, even as far back as, say, 2013, they were 12th in the world in FIFA and 18th in ELO. And as we saw throughout their history, they would have been, just probably a 3rd-tier team for long parts of their history.
Yeah.
How about Austria?
Austria are 34th in both ranking systems. They've actually slipped a little bit, especially in FIFA ranking, where they were 22nd in December 2018. Their ELO ranking has stayed more consistent, sometimes up to 20, sometimes down to the 40s, but 34th kind of a long-term average.
Yeah, but really a lot of volatility in their ranking, up to 10th in 2016. This is FIFA rankings, and in 2013, 76th. So that's a bit extreme. We don't like the FIFA rankings as much, but kind of similar volatility. I mean, they just really are a volatile team, going through some really weak periods and some pretty strong periods.
Yeah. So Sweden, despite being the top 3 team, are actually ranked ahead of Austria in both systems. They're 23rd in FIFA and 29th in ELO. Sweden have kind of been around the 20th mark in both systems for a while. This is a rise from December 2016, when they were 41st in FIFA and 25th in ELO.
Yeah, I mean, a bit all over the place too, and that kind of, this is kind of playing into my theme of the pigeons among the cats, because all of these teams, Belgium, Austria, and Sweden, have a lot of volatility. So if they're caught at a weak time here, they could really be damaged by the teams below.
All right, moving on to Azerbaijan. They're 121st in FIFA and 99th in ELO. In terms of FIFA rankings, they've kind of always been around the 100th mark, though have dropped recently with their recent poor campaigns, which we touched on, typically kind of around like the 110 mark. In ELO, they've often been below 100, but have actually recently crept above that, perhaps based on their Good Nations League campaign.
Yeah, a bit of volatility there too. They're going to be hoping that they bring the form they showed from 2014 to 2016, in which case they could be a good spoiler team here.
And then Estonia are actually ranked ahead of Azerbaijan in both systems. We'll talk a bit about that later. They're 109th in FIFA and 94th in ELO. It's a bit of a drop in FIFA particularly, where they've been in the 80s and 90s in recent years. But kind of around where they've been recently in ELO.
Yeah, I mean, pretty interesting that they are ranked, despite being in League D of the Nations League, ranked ahead of Azerbaijan. And we saw some promising players come in. So at the very least, it's going to be a good battle at the bottom between them and Azerbaijan. But I think this group promises a bit more than that, with hopefully these two teams coming back into their spoiler form.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take a look at head-to-head records. And we've organized these according to the teams that have the better record generally. And then if they've never met, we've put them with the higher ranked team. So let's begin with Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium have a better record against Austria, though it's only 1 win and 4. 3 draws are the other results.
Yeah, they haven't met much. 2012 was the last time in Euro Cup qualifying. So they did actually tie 4-4. That was their third tie in a row in history, 4-4, but haven't met recently.
Belgium, Sweden. Belgium has a winning record, 4 wins and 2 losses.
Yeah, I want to go way back in history here to the 1924 Olympics. The Olympics kind of preceded the FIFA World Cup. And in the 24 Olympics, Belgium lost to Sweden 8-1. It was considered one of the biggest upsets in soccer history.
Wow. Moving on to Belgium versus Azerbaijan. Belgium have a winning record, though it's not perfect. 3 wins and a draw in their 4 meetings.
Yeah, that last meeting was also in 2012 Euro Cup qualifying. That was where the draw took place.
And then Belgium versus Estonia, it's 7 wins and a single loss in favor of Belgium.
Okay, and these guys did meet recently, actually. 2022 World Cup qualification. Belgium won both games there.
Okay, the next matchup we'll talk about is Austria versus Sweden. They've actually met a lot. Austria has a better record at 7 wins, 2 draws, and 5 losses, but it is competitive.
Yeah, they actually met in the 1978 World Cup group stage, and Austria won that 1-0. So generally, Austria are the stronger team, and that was true in their most recent meeting in 2016, where Austria bested Sweden.
Yeah, Austria, Azerbaijan, it's 3 wins and a draw in favor of Austria.
Yeah, 2012 was their last meeting, so not that current.
And then Austria versus Estonia, it's 2 wins from 2 in favor of Austria.
Yeah, that was way back in 1998, so probably, it's probably the same nowadays, but it doesn't count for much here.
Sweden versus Azerbaijan, they've only met once as well, or had 1 meeting. That was 2 wins for Sweden in the 2002 World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, so quite a ways back there.
And then Sweden and Estonia, they actually have a long history, with Sweden winning all 4 times they've met.
Yeah, and two of those times were in 1934 and 1938 World Cups. They tended to do qualification more regionally, so they're all in the Baltic. So those were two of Estonia's historical games. Sweden kind of beat them up both times, 6-2 and 7-2. Otherwise, 1998 was the last time they met.
And then finally, Azerbaijan and Estonia, our two cats among the pigeons. They've never met.
Right. Yes, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they'll do against each other here. Now let's look and see what the odds makers say in terms of chances of teams winning the group.
Yeah, so Belgium are favored at 83%. That's not maybe a huge surprise. Austria, the pot 2 team, have 21%. But Sweden, who's ahead of them in the rankings, has a 7.7%, so a ways back. And then of the final two, Azerbaijan are slightly favored over Estonia, 0.2% to 0.18% for those two teams.
Yeah, those are very low numbers, but they're not the numbers of feeble teams. All right, so let's begin our discussion with whether you agree with those odds. Belgium very high there at 83%.
I don't entirely agree with the odds for a couple of reasons, actually. I don't think Belgium should be as high as 83%. I think that Austria and Sweden could pose a challenge to them. And I also disagree with Austria being 3 times more likely to win the group than Sweden. I would probably, maybe not quite reverse it, but I would actually give Sweden the edge over Austria. I know they performed weakly recently, but I expect that's more of a blip. And I think they have some players like Isak in good form. And I just see them as a bit of a stronger team overall.
Yeah, I have comments on that too. And generally, I agree with you. I see them pretty even odds coming into this. But let's talk about Belgium first and why you think the 83% is too high there.
Yeah, I just think, Belgium have a couple questions over them. I think they'll win the group. I guess I'll start by saying that. But I think Austria and Sweden are both pretty good teams. They're both tough teams. Sweden, a really tough pot 3 team when you look at some of the other teams around them. And I think at a game level, they can both challenge Belgium. I think Belgium's had some recent campaign where they've won all 10 games. I think those were weaker groups. I think Sweden and Austria are both good enough to take points off Belgium. So I think Belgium will win the group, but they'll have to work for it. And, I see it possible that they don't win the group.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as that. I think they'll probably win the group, but not nearly as strong as the odds make out. I think their performance in the World Cup there, they just seemed so kind of tired, and I wonder, to me, it kind of rang the ending of the golden generation. And we'll only have to look back about 10 years or so to see Belgium basically the equal or even lesser than Austria and Sweden. So
yeah, that's just it. They're not a team that's always been at the top.
Yeah, and things are a little up in the air with their players. We talked about that during the podcast, that some of the players are retired. Some big names like Eden Hazard. Some of the players like Kevin De Bruyne did play in the March games, but then some of them didn't, and it's a little unclear whether, just how many of that golden generation are not going to be part of this campaign or part of the upcoming tournament.
Mm-hmm. Do you see it kind of 3 teams fighting for first, or do you see Belgium still a step ahead of the others?
Yeah, I'd have to say Belgium a step ahead of the others, but Austria's always a bit of a black box to me. They can be a really strong team. We saw, was that 2020, their excellent commanding qualification for the 2020 Euro Cup. And I think 2016 was also quite strong. And they can also be quite weak. Their name always kind of pops up with teams like Faroe Islands getting their only win of the campaign over Austria. So they're so up and down that I could see them challenging for first here, and I could see them being challenged by Azerbaijan and Estonia, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Yeah. How do you see Austria and Sweden?
Yeah, as I said, I think they're even. I mean, Sweden can't remain as bad as they've looked over the last little while, down to League C. Here, I'm sure they'll be insulted by that and be anxious to kind of prove themselves a better team. They're a solid second-tier team, and even though they haven't done that well recently, again, you don't have to look back far to see that they reached the final rounds, like past the group stage of 2 tournaments fairly recently. So this is not, their pot 3 ranking here is really ridiculous. I think I'm like you. I'd put them at least equal to or slightly ahead of Austria.
Yeah. Of course, Sweden, they were only 1 step away from the World Cup. They fell at the final hurdle. So I think that's more representative of true Sweden. And I think they're probably more likely to challenge Belgium. And I think that, I think they'll probably be competitive and finish ahead of Austria potentially as well.
Yeah, I think if Belgium falls back to their pre-2014 form, I think historically Sweden is a stronger team than that. So, if they really fall back, if Belgium really falls back, then Sweden could even take first over them. So I see this as a really exciting group. I think that top 3 could end anyway, even though I do kind of pep Belgium still.
And we talked about spoilers kind of at the beginning and throughout. The 2 spoiler teams, what do you make of them?
Well, I'm kind of sad that both of them are in kind of not spoiler form in their last couple of campaigns. So I really wish they were kind of in their prime spoiler form, because that would make a really exciting group. I think Estonia actually have a better chance of kind of coming back to that spoiler form. They finished second in 2012 Euro Cup qualifying, and we saw they had a good crop of new players who, it only takes a couple of good players on these weaker teams to really improve their level. How about you?
Yeah, I'm not so optimistic about the spoiling possibilities. I think, sometimes I know Azerbaijan in particular have taken points off top teams, but really Sweden, who is a pot 3 team, should be a pot 2 team. Mm-hmm. And I see that resulting in a bit of a gap between, the top 3 and the bottom 2. I think, pretty feeble campaigns by both teams recently has taken some of the potential spoiler factor away from them. And I think these teams, it may, spoilers possible, but I think more likely they'll struggle to compete with the top 3 and will likely take points off each other. So I hate to kind of go against your theory here, but recent form is what's kind of changed my mind on this more than the historical record.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm always kind of hoping that these weaker teams will perform well and cause a couple of spoiler results. I think probably Austria is the most susceptible to a spoiler result, and as I said when talking about them, I thought they, of any other team, could find themselves challenged in 3rd place if they don't perform well, but you don't think so?
No, and I do agree Austria is the most susceptible. We saw it with Faroe Islands and other teams in the past, but I don't really see it here.
Yeah. Okay, well, we will see how things turned out. And we're going to look at the first set of games here. I actually don't know the results. I've been kind of keeping myself in the dark in preparation for this media cast. But Connor, I'm tired of waiting for you to commit. Tell me what's going to happen in this group.
I'm going to say Belgium first, Sweden second. Of course, second is automatic qualification. Austria third, and then some distance behind Azerbaijan fourth, Estonia fifth.
All right. Well, I generally agree with you. I have Belgium, Sweden, Austria. I put Estonia fourth. I think they might come back into more form than Azerbaijan. So I put Azerbaijan fifth, but I think this could vary. I'm excited about this group because I do hold out the possibility of Estonia challenging for third if one of these teams comes in with some of the poor form that they've been showing lately, I think there's an outside chance of that.
Well, I'd love to see it. But why don't we get to the games?
Okay, here we go. The first set of games, well, why don't you lead through it since I'm making the prediction there?
Sure. So Austria versus Azerbaijan is the first game.
Yeah, so Austria is a really unreliable team, so for me a tie wouldn't shock here, but they are at home, so I think it would more likely be on the road. I am sure that Azerbaijan will get at least one spoiler result in this campaign, and as we said, Austria is the maybe a susceptible team to that. It would be a surprise here with Austria at home, so I'm going to say 2-1 Austria.
It was 4-1, so a little further from the spoiler result. So a comfortable home win for Austria to start.
Yes, that is a good show of consistency from Austria, and they've been good over the last two campaigns, so a good start for them. What about the next game?
Next one's an intriguing game, especially based on our predictions. Sweden at home to Belgium.
And you already knew the result, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say, again, Sweden was a bit humiliated being relegated to League C. I think they will be anxious to put their best foot forward here. And Belgium is so poor in the World Cup that I'm really curious how they're going to recover. I think I'm going to say 1-1 here.
That's what I would have said. But in fact, it was a 3-0 Belgium win.
Oh my goodness.
Romelu Lukaku hitting a hat trick. So that's a statement in what I think was their toughest game of the campaign.
Yeah, and maybe they're anxious to show that they are better than they looked in the World Cup too. Okay, well, Sweden still struggling. That's a heavy loss.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the March 27 games.
So first up is Austria at home to Estonia.
Yeah, well, I might have again kind of predicted the possibility of an upset here, but given how Austria performed in the first one, I'm going to say 2-0 Austria, with a very slight possibility of Estonia surprising.
Well, there was a very slight possibility of that surprise. It was 1-1 until the 88th minute when Austria snagged the winner. So you were right to perhaps not underestimate Estonia, but for them they were close but not quite on the spoiler result.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the reverse fixture there. Okay,
right.
and yes.
Sweden versus Azerbaijan, the next match.
Right. Well, again, Azerbaijan might have a better chance of spoiling if they were at home, but Sweden has been in such poor form that a tie wouldn't shock me here, but it definitely would be a surprise. So I'll say 2-0 Sweden.
Sweden actually returned to form with a 5-0 win. I should say that the last two goals came in the 88th and 89th minutes to add some gloss, but doesn't change the fact that Sweden get off the mark.
Yeah,
do so well.
And we saw in the last couple of campaigns Azerbaijan kind of lost, losing their spoiler form a little bit here, so it's too bad. But maybe when they start playing at home, we'll see a bit more of that form. Now I will ask you about the upcoming games. June sees Azerbaijan hosting Estonia. That's a good one. What do you think?
That is a good one. Azerbaijan have two heavy defeats so far, but I did predict them to finish ahead of Estonia. So to do that, I'm going to say Azerbaijan win 2-1.
Okay, I think it's going to be a close game, and I did favor Estonia in my prediction, so I better go 1-1 here.
All right.
How about Belgium and Austria?
I do think Belgium will win, not just for results so far, but I'm going to say Belgium 2-0.
I agree with you there. Austria at least were consistent against the weaker teams, even though it was close with Estonia. Again, they're a bit of a black box, so they could surprise, but Belgium did look good in their opening game, so I would say 2-1. What did you say scoreline wise?
2-0.
2-0. Okay, so we're pretty close on that one, and we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out, because that is in the future. So that brings us to the end of our podcast here, or our media cast. So I'll just put the closing graphic up there so we end nicely. And great talking to you about Group F, Connor.
Yeah, it's an intriguing group. I'm excited to follow this one. And yeah, I will see you next time.
Okay, you bet.